Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Villains on the Rebirth server. We are with our Mastermind, Nightmare Last, level 39, who has 7.2 million XP earned, 1.1 million to go to get to level 40. And we are trying to get a story arc from Technician Nailer before we get level 40, because then he probably won't give us any. And he says, "A Nightmare Last, remember that information you gaffed from the Nemesis army for me a bit back? Well, I was going through it, looking for more stable dimensions, when I noticed there was this one spot they mentioned the Eros were also exploring. So I talked to some buddies of mine in Intel, and they told me that a captured Nemesis Army soldiers have been talking about something called the Shadow Shard. So now he wants us to go to the Shadow Shard and check it out. So force scientists to get data. So we're going to love this. Here's me plan. I set my portal air to intercept the next time the Eros try to send something over to the Shadow Shard. So we're going to have to go in and get some info. I actually don't know if I'll mine the Shadow Shard too much, because with this character, because I can fly and turn invisible. But right here what we're doing is not going into the Shadow Shard, but trying to find the data on going into the Shadow Shard. So we'll summon up our little demons and get ready for some combat. I don't know if we're now on a story arc for him. Excellent. So we're on a story arc, and so we will follow through this story arc with this character at level 39, and then I'll stop recording and we'll go ahead and record again at level 40. Again, I'll try to do a story arc every level. I think that's enough. I mean, we're already in a pretty long season 3 here, and then season 4 will be levels 40 to 50. So let's see. We need to buff up our allies. But one thing I've been doing, actually, I'm playing a lot of House Flipper, of course. But House Flipper's not a role-playing game, and I'm, playing D&D with some of my friends once every 2 weeks. But we don't play at any other time. One of my friends, very frustrated by this, wants to play more. He would love us to play every week. I think he would love us to play twice a week. When we were kids, and I reminded him of this, we played D&D, man. We would play after school almost every day. We would play on weekends. When we got a little older, we would play in the evenings. And even when I was in college and I was permanent GM, and I think I've mentioned this, we would play twice a week, on Friday, Saturday, and then the next Friday, and then usually take that Saturday off. At that point, most of my champion scenarios were designed to go 2 to 3 nights. They usually lasted about 3. If they went a 4th, obviously we'd finish the scenario up that 4th night on Saturday. If they only went 2, then we would take a week off. But most of the time we played Friday, Saturday, Friday, and then took a week off. So we were playing 3 days every 2 weeks, which is a lot. And I think he would really love to play, say Saturday night, Sunday afternoon. And I think he would probably be super happy to, and we're going to pull some guys out of here because there are a bunch of them in this room, and the spawns are pretty close. I think he would be really perfectly fine doing something like playing one campaign on Fridays and one campaign on Sundays or something like that. He'd be perfectly happy to do that. And I wouldn't mind either, GM one night, be a player the other night. But I can't run the game every single week. It's too much. There's too much to do in the rest of my life that I don't have time to prep everything that I would need to every week. I also think that the other 2 players besides me and him wouldn't want to do it. The one guy, in fact, asked us to switch which Saturday we were playing because he has something to do with his wife on the alternate Saturday. So I don't remember which, but let's say we were playing 1st and 3rd Saturday every month. He has to switch to 2nd and 4th because he has something to do with his wife. I don't know if maybe they're PTA with their kid or something like that. I don't know. He didn't say what it was, and it doesn't really matter. So we did switch it, but I think that means he wouldn't be able to play every week. And the other person who plays with us, who's the one that's new to D&D, I think she doesn't necessarily have things to do that prevent her from joining us. She lives alone, and with coronavirus, she's in isolation just like the rest of us, not really going anywhere, doing things, visiting family, etc. And she also lives in a new town. She doesn't have a lot of friends. She's actually complained about this, that she moved to a new town, and before she got a chance to make friends with people, coronavirus hit, and so she doesn't really know anybody locally. And all her friends are either in this city where I live or in another state. And so she feels very isolated. She feels very alone. And I think she would probably like to play D&D in that sense, but there was a point where she and I played a session in between one of the other sessions, and then we moved a session around. So we played D&D for like, she played D&D for like 3 or 4 weeks in a row with me. The other players didn't, because they weren't in the one-on-one session that she and I had. She's a ranger, and we it was the quest. She had to like go on a quest to find her beast that she's the beast master of, to find her panther. And she found a lodging of a bunch of rangers called the Green Company, and they taught her how to summon her beast. And they all had their own different pets. One had a cheetah, one had a snow leopard, and so on. And so this player character has a panther, who's this big black awesome panther from Africa. It's pretty cool. But after doing like 3 or 4 weeks in a row like that, she said, boy, I need a break. I don't think I could do it every week long term. And so only my really good friend and I probably would be interested in playing every single week, which means that we wouldn't be able to play every week, even if I could, in terms of being a DM, run the campaign every week. And I can't. Unless I wanted to completely give up any other recreational activity, like watching movies, playing City of Heroes, playing House Flipper, and I don't want to do that. I feel like, and not only feel like, I'm absolutely certain if all I did was DMing stuff so that I could crank out an adventure every single week, I would burn out. And I think a lot of people probably would. You've got to have other forms of recreation and entertainment. So this friend of mine really wants to play more D&D, and I really want to play D&D, but I don't necessarily want to DM it any more than I currently am, and I don't think I'd be able to. So, and I'd love to be a player rather than a DM, not permanently be a player and not a DM. In other words, I don't want to stop DMing, but I would love to have a chance in between, and there is our scientist that we're looking for. And a boss, it looks like. Somebody splattering out, yep. Spikes. So let's see what we've got here. I would love to be a player and play a player character in addition to being a DM. So we got to kidnap the person. Let me just go up and see what we got. So we've got these guys behind him. We've got some guys over there. So let's take the guys on the side first. So what he has done, and he wants me to do, but I don't. One of the things I really don't have interest in playing D&D with a bunch of strangers, and I really don't want to get all excited about a character concept and, in a sense, blow a really interesting and fun character concept that I really want to play on a group of strangers who, in all likelihood, will only play for a few months and gain 2 or 3 levels, and then we're going to stop. And now either I have to reboot that character to play in another campaign or not use it again, neither of which option sounds great to me. I'm just not interested in going to, like D&D Beyond onto their looking for groups section and just joining a group that somebody has. So, but this friend of mine is desperate. So Wizards of the Coast had said that they were doing, they were going to set up something called Virtual D&D, where you could join you can join people using their website or something like this. And he wanted to do that, but then he changed his mind, and he joined a Facebook group, a Reddit group, and he got involved in Roll20, which is a virtual tabletop similar to the one I use called Foundry, but this one is one that's like online instead of locally hosted on your computer. And it costs money, subscription fee every month. I don't know if he's paid the subscription fee. He probably has. He actually told me which one he was doing, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, somebody has set up that was starting on Sunday afternoons. And I went there and found it. It's a paid DMing experience. So basically, no, get over here. I don't want you to aggro the boss. No, get over here. Don't aggro the boss. Alright, we got it. I thought she was closer to the boss than that. Alright, come back. So we're going to set up and prep our allies, and then we'll go in, and I want to make sure we get some mez defense on all of these guys. And then we'll get Hell on Earth and everything going. So yeah, so it turns out, I looked at what this guy was doing, and you have to pay him like $7 a week. It meets every week on Sundays, and they're doing Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Like, so he said, "You want to join? You know, come on, we can play together." Like, I'm not interested in playing D&D with strangers for pay. Like, that's just, to me, that's not what I want. If I'm gonna play it, I want to play with friends of mine. But I still would like to do some. It doesn't have to be D&D, but I still would like to do some, you know, role-playing game, like tabletop role-playing games, as a player, and not necessarily as the DM. So, and I really have no good way to do this at this point, because again, most of my friends are not able to do it every week, and this guy is doing AoE, so it's going to hurt my buddies, but we'll be fine. As long as we keep healing them, they'll be alright. So he's doing that, and he's applied to 3 different campaigns, and I don't know, you know, what success he's going to have. If it's really awesome, then the next time he does it, maybe, perhaps, and we're being ambushed now, maybe, perhaps, I will join him. And just pausing on that, how'd I know it's an ambush and not enemies I missed? This is a +1 room, and these guys are only +1. These guys are +0 to the mission. So that means they're probably an ambush. And there's another ambush coming? Or no, he just lost me because he's an idiot NPC. Come on. So, yeah, so he's doing that. And now we need to find the mission exit. Mission complete. What? Weird. Okay, but do we need to go up into the new area to get out? I mean, let's go. I mean, yeah, what's there? We'll fight. Doesn't matter. So anyway, as this was all going on, somebody made a post to the D&D Beyond forums talking about a series of relatively inexpensive books that you can get either physically or PDFs of in Drive-Thru RPG, which is an online site. It's the place where I ordered my first edition AD&D books. I have them downstairs. I haven't opened them yet because I'm letting them disinfect. Whenever I get packages, I just leave them in my garage for 2 weeks to make sure that if there's any coronavirus on it, it's died. And there's no urgency. I've already read through the books as PDFs, so I only have them as kind of collector's items, which they really aren't because they're reprints. But I really just have them to have them because I like hardcovers and hard copies of things when it comes to books. So anyway, on Drive-Thru RPG, this person pointed this out. There are books designed to help you play D&D 5th edition solo and by yourself. This is not a game master with one player. This is you playing by yourself, and you're basically being both the player and the game master. And there's several ways to do this, and D&D 1st edition did supply kind of the basic rules of how to do this. I don't need that. Gary Gygax in Dungeon Master's Guide actually has a section for randomly generating dungeons. So you start with a random starting room that has a couple doors, and then when you open a door, you randomly roll to see what's beyond it. And that was for Dungeon Masters to randomly generate dungeons if they don't know how to make maps or don't want to spend time making maps. Or let's say you guys get together, you and your friends get together, and you all want to play D&D, and nobody really has anything prepared to DM, and nobody's bought any modules, and somebody says, well, I'll DM, and they just pull open the random charts, and they randomly, they start you in a starting area, and they just randomly generate hallways and rooms, and then when you enter a room, you randomly, roll for what's in the room, whether it's a trap or a monster, and, you just sort of make it up as you go. And there's a lot of merit to doing this, even in with groups of people, because you can get some really cool interactions between the players and the monsters, and some really interesting things you would not have thought to put in if you were just writing it yourself. Now, it's not going to have the sort of really good, solid, linear consistency of a story that somebody purposely made up, but you can also... Boy, there's another level in here. Do we really need to keep going, or can we just leave? Why would they have made all these levels if you can just leave? So it's not going to have the really linear, coherent, cohesive story, and I forgot to turn on stealth, that you would have... Where are my buddies? Come on. It's not going to have the really coherent story that you would have for, say, a City of Heroes story arc or something like that. But if you think about role-playing, I mean, and the way I used to role-play on Mushes, there usually wasn't a story. You'd log in, other people would be logged in, you'd go to an area, and someone would just start role-playing, and you would just respond. You would reflect back whatever they were saying. It was like pure improv almost. And it can be super fun. You roll the dice, and you walk into a room, okay, there are goblins in here, and then you roll the dice for what do they want. Well, they're actually friendly. Why are these goblins friendly? So now the DM has to come up with a reason why they would be friendly, and the players then decide, are we going to accept the friendship of the goblins, or are we going to fight them and attack them aggressively because they're just evil? And so you kind of make it up as you go, and there isn't a story ahead of time, but if you do it right, and you have a lot of fun with it, and you role play along the way, there's a story after the fact. And in some degree, this is almost like the purest way to play a role-playing game, where that nobody knows what the story is ahead of time, but rather you start with a little prompt, and then the story evolves, develops as you play it. And that can be incredibly fun. And again, it generates a whole lot of ideas that you probably would not have thought of if you were just inventing the story. Right? Because we tend to lock ourselves in a lot of times to preconceptions. And the random number generators don't have any preconceptions, so the die rolls double zeros on a die 100, and you get this weird, extreme, unusual result. And now you have to roleplay about it, and you gotta find a way to make it make sense, which is what the challenge of roleplaying really is. And it's super fun to do that in groups, in like a consent mush. I often enjoyed doing that. You guys need to come back here. Come back here, please. You guys are being idiots. Attack this guy. Don't aggro the whole room. It's my fault. I should have teleported more of the enemies here. Come back here. Do not aggro the whole room. So anyway, the random number generator stuff in Dungeon Master's Guide, they have it, I think, in 5th edition as well. They certainly have wandering monsters, random monsters tables. You can populate any. You can make a random map, or you can get a map online that you don't know what's in each room, and then just follow the map and go. But it's more fun to sort of discover the room as you go. And so there's always been this ability in D&D to randomly generate encounters, randomly generate monsters, randomly generate dungeons. And since there is that ability, you can obviously use it solo, right? You just you run your character, or however many characters you want. I mean, I used to do this. I actually would make up like a party of 5 or 6 or 7 characters, and I would run them all through the Caves of Chaos in D&D, or one of the other modules, or I would generate a random dungeon. I remember sitting in my bedroom, surrounded, like I had in front of me, directly in front of me was some hardcover surface, maybe a hardcover book I wasn't using, a rule book for a different game, on which I would have my miniatures of the party, and then I had a box of miniatures that were probably orcs or whatever, that would be whatever monster I needed them to be. And then on the left and right side of me, I had 3 books, like the module booklets, right, next to each other, like. So I was surrounded by like a U of books. In front of me were the miniatures. On either side were 3 characters. I sat in the middle. I mean, I was a kid and I had a lot of flexibility, and so I would just like squat in the middle. I could squat for hours when I was a kid. And I would then play D&D. right? And I had a map. I can't remember where I put the map now, and probably next to the miniatures. And then I had the rule books and a place to roll the dice. I would roll them like next to the miniatures on the hard surface, and I'd play D&D. Now, of course, you can't cheat when you do this, or that makes the game suck. But you're basically soloing your way through the adventure. And guys, it's not appreciably different from what I'm doing right here. If you think about it, I'm just soloing this character. And I'm going through missions and fighting enemies. And what's happening? The computer is randomly spawning enemies of a certain type that's appropriate to this lair, right? Using the equivalent, the COH equivalent of wandering monster tables. And then when you fight them, they also have an algorithm, a standard list of commands that they follow with conditionals. If this is true, do this. If this is true, do that. And maybe there's some probabilities. There's a 50% chance they're going to shoot, 50% chance they're going to punch, whatever it happens to be. Well, they don't really have tables in the Dungeon Master's Guide for behaviors like that. But you can easily generate them, or just have the character, just have rules for yourself. Like, the character will always use its melee attack if it's within X distance. It will always use multi-attack if it has it. If it has special abilities, it will engage them when applicable. And you just play it that way. And then what this guy in D&D Beyond had pointed out was somebody had made a book. It's like a 65-page PDF called DM Yourself, which I have on my wish list. I haven't bought it yet, but I think I might get it. I'm not sure, and I'll say this now, I'm not sure which of the options that I'm going to discuss that I'm actually going to do. So there are like 3 or 4 options. I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet, which is why I haven't bought any books yet. But the idea of this book is it tells you, here are some simple tables that you can roll on that act as algorithms for the animals, for the monsters. And you also set some default behaviors for your characters, like my character never loots corpses, but always loots chests. And my character never searches for secret doors, but always searches for concealed drawers in dressers or what have you. And then, you have to be honest and play it correctly. And so there are sort of a couple of ways to do this. One way is there are solo adventure modules, and these sound very interesting to me, that are designed for you to play solo, and they're basically choose your own adventure with dice, right? So if you think of the old school choose your own adventure novels, you'd read the beginning of the book, and it would say, if you argue with the professor, turn to page 35. If you agree with the professor, turn to page 17. And you would flip through the book, and you would make a story, and the story would be different depending on which choices you made. Usually there were only a couple of possible outcomes, but the story would be different depending on what choices you made. And now we're heading out of here. And so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to do randomly generated dungeons, like they have in the Dungeon Master's Guide. And the third way to do it is to actually buy a module or an adventure like Waterdeep Dragon Heist and run through it yourself. And apparently the guy has some really good rules for how to do it. Basically, I guess you read the description text boxes that they have, where the DM is supposed to read to the party, and then you try to make decisions blind as to how your character would respond to that text box, and then you skim through the area beneath the text box to see what would happen, and then you might eventually do some deep reading if you make a perception check or an investigation check. So that's a really interesting thing. I mean, there are lots of adventures that have been put out for D&D that I would love to try playing or DMing, and I'll probably never have the opportunity to do it. It's 5th edition. It'll probably be replaced by 6th edition in a few years. Maybe we'll finish my campaign in a year or two if it keeps going, and then if we want to keep playing, maybe somebody else DMs and plays through 1 or 2 of the published adventures, and then it's like at 6th edition we're going to switch, versus all the, dozen, 15, something like that, adventures, and they put out more every year. So I'd like to experience some of those. So I'm not sure if I would rather A, do a choose your own adventure, B, do a randomly generated dungeon, or C, try a published adventure using this guy's technique. And I don't know yet which of those I want to do. And that's only 3 of the options. There are actually more. But let's look at our clue. We just have a bunch of numbers, a gold mine of information. Why do we find pages when we were looking in a computer? Weird. He says, oh, this is just what I wanted to see. Give me a bit to look this over, Nightmare Lass. I think I might have all I need to send you on a bit of a tour. So the clue now says we gave information to him and we struck Portal Corp and doesn't really say anymore. Okay, so I'll talk about the other options when we get into our next adventure. And you guys feel free to leave comments about what you would like to do. Like, if you were going to solo, would you want to roll random dungeons? Would you want to do a choose your own adventure that's built for like one character? Would you play multiple characters or just one? Most of the time they recommend a single character. My feeling is, well, I'm not really going to be role-playing. I'm just role-playing with myself. And I'm going to be playing both myself and all the NPCs, so why not play several characters, essentially? I mean, one guy would be like the main star of the story, and the other PCs would basically be NPCs working with him, but I'd play them all as characters. So, I don't know. There are sidekick rules as well that where you basically use an NPC stat block as a sidekick, and then somehow they level up or gain hit dice or whatever with you, but they're not full characters. I'm not sure what those sidekick rules are. I think they're going to be coming out with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, which comes out in a week or so. So I'll probably look at that then. So there are a lot of interesting ways to do it. Which way would you do it? Would you never do it at all? A lot of people wouldn't play solo City of Heroes and want to play with groups too. As you can see, I'm perfectly fine playing solo. Now, would I rather play regular D&D with a group of people and somebody DMing me through Waterdeep Dragon Heist or Dungeon of the Mad Mage or something? Sure, but on the other hand, most of these dungeons I'm relatively sure I'm never going to experience because nobody's going to want to play them. Dungeon of the Mad Mage is a great example. It's a dungeon crawl. Most of the people I know don't want to do a dungeon crawl. But I'd still like to see it, and it's supposed to have some pretty interesting traps and puzzles and stuff like that. Don't know how that's going to work if you're trying to solo it, but it's something that might be kind of fun to try. So, I don't know. What would you prefer to do? If you're going to do D&D and you're going to do it solo, would you randomly generate a dungeon? Would you use a choose your own adventure? Or would you use a published adventure and try to use the DM yourself technique of like skimming and quick reading and then making die rolls and trying to role play your way through a published module? So let me know in the comments what you think sounds the most interesting, and then I'm going to give you some even other choices. But let's read this. He says, everything's ready. I've got the portal all synced up for you. You'll be going to a base the heroes have established in the pocket dimension. They're calling the Shadow Shard. The place is called Mole Point Bravo. And not only is it going to be full of longbow troops, but there might be some of the human natives on hand talking to them. Your job will be to clean the place out, lock their portals, and secure it all for Arachnos. We're ready to go when you are. Okay. I really need to get rid of some of this salvage. Let me take a look. Is there anything I can craft here? Yeah, none of this is anything I want. Can I... My vault is full too, I think. Oh, I can store 2 things in the vault. Okay. Let's just throw 2 scopes in the vault. Vault's full, but now we can collect a little bit more salvage in case something cool comes across us. We'll de-summon our demons if we're going into the Shadow Shard flying around. We're probably going to need to summon them only in specific places. Here being one of them. Right, override the computer. 2 guard squads remain. 2 natives to retrieve optional and defeat the commander. Okay, well, it looks like we're going to be fighting right here, so let's start summoning. So those are options with D&D. But D&D is not the only game in town. Obviously, you could do the same thing with Champions or what have you. DM yourself, and several of the other supplements that I talked about in the Choose Your Own Adventure stuff, the ones that I've seen are, I'm sure there are others, were all 5th edition D&D. You could also do probably most of the DM yourself techniques using a D&D. And again, there are rules in the DM guide and very basic rules on how to solo. But that's pretty much just running through a random dungeon, fighting whatever monsters are randomly generated, which can be fun, but isn't all that I think I would want. So then the question becomes, what other options are there? Well, it turns out there are whole systems designed. Some are actual game systems, and some are system agnostic, algorithmic systems to solo roleplay. Probably the original, the big one that everybody uses is called the Mythic GM, and the idea of this is it's basically this book that gives you a whole bunch of system independent, so it's not got anything to do with systems. So you can play with D&D or Champions or anything else. System independent decisions that are the sorts of decisions that DMs would make, say, when building an adventure or when adjudicating the options and the choices your characters are making. So Mythic GM, I've watched somebody play it, and there are a couple people who do this online on streams, and I'm blanking on the name. The guy's name is Trevor something, and he does Me, Myself, and Die, spelled D-I-E, like dice. And he's basically this voice actor, sort of like Critical Role, but solo. And so he uses the Mythic system in his first season, and he uses a different system that I'll talk about in a moment in his second season. And so what he does is he just starts with that, makes up a story, and so the Mythic system will be stuff like, you come to a new area, and you say, okay, what am I going to find? Am I going to find something dangerous in this area? And then you make a roll, and it says, extreme yes. Okay, not only you're finding something dangerous, but it's extremely dangerous. All right, so then you say, like, roll on the higher level random monster charts, and you find out there's a troll here, and then you can roll for the troll's motivations, and its motivation is to gain treasure. And so you decide, okay, it's a troll who's standing at a bridge, and in order to cross the bridge, you've got to give him gold. Your character does your character have any gold? No. So then you decide you want to maybe get into combat with the troll. Then you can run combat as normal, and then there, I guess, are rules within the Mythic system as to how the enemies would act and that sort of thing. Override a computer, 2 captives, and defeat a commander. Well, I have no idea where these guys are going to be, so let's just keep going. So that's one way to do it, and you can use that with any system. So Me, Myself, and Die, the first season, I actually used the Savage World system, which I don't really know anything about. It seems like a kind of an odd system to me, the way he was running it. I couldn't quite... Like, he was rolling 2 dice, and I couldn't tell, like, which one was supposed to be the die that he was paying attention to. It sort of seemed like roll 2 dice, take the higher of the 2, but they were different dice, so roll a die 6 and a die 8, and then whichever one rolls higher you take. Not sure. I mean, like, he didn't really explain the rules of Savage World, which is fine, because he was mostly doing a narrative, but his narrative was really cool. I mean, he started out, he rolled up that... I guess in the Mythic system you have to roll up, like, if you have friends, and he had a friend, and then he rolled it up that it was a half-orc using D&D rules. So he's sort of mixing D&D and Savage World, came up with a name for him, came up with a motivation for him, and interpreted the 1 die roll that his friend was a prisoner and was going to the gallows, and he decided, okay, we're outside of town, and I'm trying to rescue my friend from being hanged. And so then he asked, are there 5 or more guards? And the system told him yes. He rolled yes. So it wasn't an extreme yes. So he said, well, a regular yes, I guess there are 5 guards. If it had been extreme yes, maybe there would have been 8 guards. If it had been no, there'd maybe be 3 or 4 guards. Extreme no, maybe there'd be only 1 guard, right? And so this is a nemesis that died, so there must be nemesis captives here. And so, so he shot one of the guards. The other guards were then, of course, alerted to his presence. He rolled initiative. He won initiative. He yelled at his friend to break your bonds and get out. The friend broke his bonds and ran away. But then when the guards went, they stabbed him in the back, and he fell to the ground dying. And then the sergeant of the guard chopped his head off. So the guy's main character ran away. He was being chased by the guards. Then he came up with a scene change, right? So, like, something happens to change the nature of what's going on, And based on his roles, he came up with a bounty hunter who was looking for his character showed up, but then he was able to intimidate the bounty hunter with like a critical success, so that the bounty hunter left him alone, and then he fled, and then he had a disaster happen, so he fell into a ravine, and he almost drowned, and then the river carried him away, and he had a lucky result, so it carried him away from the guards who were chasing him, and then he ended up with, so there's a boss, but that's not the commander probably. He ended up with finding a hunting lodge, and he found an ally who was a wounded orc, and the orc decided to help him because the guy had been friendly with half-orcs, so he considered him friendly, and then he decided we're going to attack the town and try to get revenge on this sergeant of the guard who killed my friend and beheaded him. And so he's come up with this whole story that's really cool and interesting and fun, and doing it all with random rolls on this Mythic GM set of charts. He also has there's also another thing called the Universal NPC Emulator or something, where it'll give you NPC motivations and abilities and strengths and things like this. And so that's where he came up with the half-orc friend, and where he came up with the bounty hunter. So it's pretty cool, and it seems like a lot of fun, and to me, not appreciably different from what we're doing right here, where we're just soloing City of Heroes, right? So this guy's just a regular boss, so we're just going to go ahead and attack him outright. I'm not going to worry about teleporting anybody. I'm going to lower his defenses. Oh, mine, he died. I couldn't get him in time. Let's finish this one off. Back to the boss. So that's one way to do it. You can use your preferred... Oh, he's going to flee now and aggro everybody else. You can use your preferred game system, D&D, Savage World, Champions, Rollmaster, you know, whatever you want. Middle-earth role-playing game, doesn't matter. And use the Mythic system to basically generate... Basically what it's doing, the difference between what we're doing here and using something like the Mythic system is that... are you stuck there? No. The difference between those two things is that with the Mythic system, instead of the computer making the decisions, you're rolling the dice. It's literally the same thing, right? The computer has a lookup table. There's another boss. Has a lookup table, and it is rolling random numbers under different conditions. Okay, there's a critical hit, there's a chance of damage, and then like the enemies maybe respond. For instance, what these guys do when they see us, there's some algorithmic decision tree that the computer goes through, and what the Mythic system or the other systems I'm going to discuss do for you is they do the decision tree. Like they produce the decision tree as a table you can look up, and you roll instead of the computer rolling, right? Instead of the computer using the random number generator built into the computer, you just roll die 20 or die 100 or die 8 or whatever it happens to be. And so it's not really conceptually any different from what we're doing here. Obviously it's slower because you don't have a computer doing it for you. Obviously it's much less complex because you can give a computer many more tables and many longer, bigger tables, and I need to replace one of my minions here. You can give a computer a lot more options to choose from than you can give a player on a handful of tables, right? And a lot of it is open to your own personal roleplay and interpretation, because it'll just say that, like, you suffer a setback, and then you have to figure out, okay, well, in this circumstance, what would a setback be, right? Would it be that my character dies? Would it be that my character falls into a pit trap, etc.? Right? So, like the one guy, like the Me, Myself, and Die narrator, decided the sudden change would be that this bounty hunter would show up. And he decided that the bounty hunter would be, I guess he rolled something that told him that was significant or something. And he said, well, okay, this bounty hunter, we know that I have a minor foe that was rolled up at the beginning. He didn't know the name of the foe or why this was his foe or who the foe was, but he knew he had a foe. So he said, well, why don't we have the bounty hunter be working for the foe? And so, so this is sort of really interesting conceptually because it allows you to be much more free and creative with your imagination than something like City of Heroes does, where everything is right in front of you. So there really isn't a lot of imagination that goes into executing this, right? Because you don't need to imagine what the demons look like, for example. You know what they look like. They're right here. You don't need to imagine what the enemies can do. You can see what the enemies can do. They're right in front of you, right? I kind of like the idea. I think it's pretty cool. Now, the Mythic system, again, there is actually a Mythic game system, and they designed this sort of automated die-rolling GM for that. But then they created the Mythic GM, which is system agnostic. It doesn't require you to use the quote-unquote Mythic system. You can use any game system. But there are other game systems that are designed, like the Mythic system, for this kind of play and designed particularly for solo play. Probably the most interesting and relatively new one, and seems very well produced and is quite popular with people doing this, is the Ironsworn game. And Ironsworn is pretty cool. I've actually watched somebody... So, one of the ways I learned about it was the Me, Myself, and Die guy in the first season was using Savage Worlds with Mythic. In the second season, he was using Ironsworn. Now, I actually started out watching the second season, watched an episode, and said, I really want to watch first season, and I went back and started watching first season. And I think it's pretty cool. They're half-hour episodes. If you have any interest, go ahead and watch it. They're pretty cool. But I then started looking into the Ironsworn system. I started watching somebody else. Can't remember his name. It starts with a 5, but I can't remember his name. Who's doing on Roll20, doing a very detailed Ironsworn playthrough. Now, he's not being as narrative, I think, as the Me, Myself, and Die guy, but he's explaining all the rules as he goes. He's showing you the roll tables, which Me, Myself, and Die doesn't really do, and I think it's pretty cool, and it's interesting. There's another boss. I like that there are all these bosses here. They give us a lot of experience and a nice challenge. And our salvage is full again. I definitely need to go back to the base and dump some of this salvage in my salvage rack. So anyway, in addition to Mythic, there are options like Ironsworn. There's another game called Scarlet Heroes. There are multiple other ones. Some of them are games for Against the Darkness, I think it's called, is an actual game that's designed to be a choose-your-own-adventure type game. So there are lots of different options for doing this. I'm not sure which one I want to do, right? Do I want to do D&D? If I want to do D&D, do I want to do a random dungeon or try to do a module or use a choose-your-own-adventure? Do I want to try a system like Mythic with D&D? Do I want to try Ironsworn? Maybe try a little bit of all of them. I don't really know. So I don't know. What do you guys have do you guys have any experience with this? Which ones sound interesting to you? And then the next question would be, is this something I should think about recording and posting? Maybe after we're done with our City of Heroes playthrough and after I've kind of learned the ropes of how to do this? And if so, if we're going to record it, what would you like to see? Would you like to see, like, an old school AD&D go through a random dungeon killing things? I feel like that might be kind of boring. Would you like to see a module like, I don't know, Rise of Tiamat or something played solo and how that works? Would you like to see Ironsworn or some kind of a Mythic version, the Mythic game? Or just not see any of it, guys. If you think it's boring, say so. I have no interest in boring the heck out of people. I mean, other people do stream it, and they seem to have followers. The one guy I was watching has about 50% more subscribers than I do. At the time of this recording, I've got about 105, 110. He's got like 160. and he gets about, I don't know, 4,000 views for each of his videos, which is way more than I get. So there seemed to be some interest in watching this, but I have no idea if the people who've been watching me play video games would want to watch something that's pretty much theater of the mind. I mean, you can put tokens on a map and stuff, and I probably would do that because I need that for my own visual reference to see things. But it's not clear to me whether people would really want to watch a bunch of static tokens on a map and maybe watch a progress bar going up or down versus watching something like this, which is obviously more interesting and exciting. So let me know, what have you heard? What game systems have I not mentioned? There are a lot of other solo ones. I've mentioned 3 or 4, but there are lots of other ones. Have anybody tried Mystic? Do you like it? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? At this point, guys, I think we're going to fly around and search because this is just a huge map and I've had enough. We've killed a bunch of people, and I like that there were bosses, but let's see if we can find the computers. There's a bunch of Nemesis guys. Sometimes there's like a little door at the end of this. I don't see one. Like, how are there going to be computers in the middle of the shard? There's got to be some sort of a base to go into, no? So yeah, I mean, let me know what you think. First of all, what do you think of in terms of for yourself? Like, if you were going to do this, first of all, would you do it? If you were going to do it, what system would you use? Would you try to use an old school system? Would you try to use the Mythic system with a newer system like D&D? Would you try to use the D&D like DM yourself specific system? Would you use a module? Would you try to do random generation? Would you use choose your own adventure? Which ones do you think would be more fun to do for you? Which ones would be interesting to watch? Would you do Ironsworn? Would you do Mythic? Would you do Scarlet Heroes? Have you tried any of these? If so, do you like them? Are they any fun? Let me know in the comments. Okay, I have no friggin' idea where we're supposed to go here. This is another one of these giant mega outdoor bust your chops missions. It just like huge time sink, flying all around. We haven't found a single one of the things we're looking for. Not one. In this whole area. Do we need to go to a different place? It doesn't look like it. I don't see any other like floating islands here. I mean, there's these rocks, but they don't obviously have anywhere to go in terms of exploring them. God, I mean, look at all this crap. Is that the commander? There's the commander, and he's an elite boss. Okay, so we can at least attack him. So yeah, my really good friend, I linked him to the Me, Myself, and Die first episode and said, here, you should watch this. It's pretty cool and interesting, and it's only a half hour, and see if you like it. I'm doing that as sort of an entree into saying to him, either A, would you be interested in playing, you know, by yourself if you really want some D&D, or B, would you be interested in, say, you and I playing, because Ironsworn you could play co-op, and you both play characters, and then you use the system. Same thing with Mythic. I mean, you can play together and let the system be the DM. Or one of us could DM. We could take turns DMing, like we used to do back in the day. Like, we really didn't do any prep back in the day when we were kids. We just went into the Caves of Chaos, picked a cave, and explored it. And whoever was the DM just read whatever was there, and we just played whatever was there. Now, I suspect he would say that that would not be satisfying, that he would not enjoy it. But I thought maybe if he watches Me, Myself, and Die and sees how cool it could be, he might want to try it. I'm sure he'd say, no, this stinks. And one of the things I'd say to him, yes, but you're playing, he's right now playing, he's figured out how to do it because he was having trouble on his computer with it, Pathfinder Kingmaker, right? Now, what is that? That is a solo computer RPG. By the way, he also likes Pillars of Eternity. He's dying to play Baldur's Gate. These are solo computer RPGs, right? You're playing by yourself. You can't roleplay with anyone else. You can't give yourself dialogue that anybody else is going to hear or read or see, right? So if that's the case, then how is using the Ironsworn or the Mythic system really different? He's controlling all of his characters in Pathfinder. He's leveling them up. They're doing exactly what he wants. I think it's a turn-based game, so they're doing exactly what he wants. They never do anything on their own. If they're doing anything on their own, it's all algorithmic. If you play, say, something like Dragon Age, you get the same thing. You can actually see the algorithm. You tell your character Wynn, who you want to be a healer, to the first, you give her a priority list. Priority 1, heal a party member below 25% health. Priority 2, heal yourself below 50% health. Priority 3, cast, control monster on the nearest enemy. Priority 4, if somebody is stunned, cast unstun, or whatever. I'm making up spell names. That's basically the same thing. You can set up a priority list like that in Ironsworn or whatever, and just follow that and roll dice. It's exactly the same, except the computer's doing it instead of the dice. And so it's interesting that he loves Pathfinder Kingmaker, but I guarantee you, if I say to him, you should try this, the Mythic system or the DM Yourself system, he'd say, no, that sucks. And the only difference is whether you're seeing graphics or not. But literally, that is the only difference. Alright, so we're going after this elite boss. I'm going to try to pull the minion, but I don't expect the boss to not come. Oh, we got him. Alright. Okay, let's get the elite boss. And I'm going to give some sturdy to Curly. And I'm going to give some dodge to Mo. And I need to negate his defenses. Or lower them anyway. Give some more sturdy to Curly. I definitely want him to survive. Give Larry some defense. Come on, Larry. No, one of the little guys died already. Let's bring him back. No. I am screwing up with my clicks. Fortunately, we're doing well enough against him it doesn't matter that much. The little guy needs to be buffed. We're doing alright. Let's make sure we get Mez defense on Mo. Or not Mo, Curly, and then we'll do it on Mo. Heal Meanie. Okay, we heal. You can see that the, oh, and I can debuff his defenses again. That's pretty quick recharge, I like it. It's good on that fast recharge. You can see that, I think you might have been able to see a couple times that, Curly put the freeze on him, and then he, like, immediately, it appeared, and then immediately disappeared. Come on, Curly. And now he's gonna run. That's not good. I guess I should have cleared more of this out. Because if he runs over there, we're gonna aggro. Miney is hurt. Come on. We got him. We've got him. Come on, finish him off. I guess I should call that an Omega Strike, right? The Alpha Strike is where you open with this big blow up. Some of these villains are programmed to do a big strike when they're about to die. I guess we can call that an Omega Strike. Okay, we need to resummon the little guy again. This time Meanie. So yeah, but again, if you watch the way this guy acted, right? When he was being slowed, he tried to run away from the slow. That's an if-then statement. When he was down to low hit points, he threw out his Omega Strike. That's an if-then statement. If hit points less than 10% fireball, right? And so you can easily write algorithms like that for any NPC, and then just follow what the dice say. And so that's what these mythic and these other systems do. Now, Ironsworn is very different. It's not based on numerical values generally, like armor class and hit points. Instead, it's much more qualitative. It'll say you experience a major setback and roll on the setbacks table, and then the setback will say you like lose initiative or you lose momentum, and then if your momentum goes down too low, there are penalties to things. You lose progress on your quest, and so then your progress bar goes down and stuff like that. I guess we're just going to have to kill everything in here, since I don't know where the heck the computer is. Are you kidding me? Was the computer back in the original place? I bet it was, and I'm looking out here for a computer. Let's finish this off. I'm going to fly back to the original starting location. I bet there was a glowy in there that I missed because I was talking. Who was screaming at the screen? I deserve it. Alright, we'll get rid of these guys. We'll turn invisible. We're going to go back to the beginning, which is over here. Why is this not showing up in my screen? It should be. It's showing up here and there, but it's not showing up here where it should be. It's weird. Yeah, I don't know who the natives are, but like at this point I don't care. I would like to finish this mission. And these doors are so disguised that if there's another one somewhere, I'm never going to find it. But let's see. Maybe there's a computer in here? I hear a glowy. Yep, I missed it. Where is it? There. Because I'm stupid. Alright, this should complete the mission. We didn't lose that much time because we had to find the boss anyway. And I don't know who the natives were, but it's optional, so... and it's not even going to let us rescue them now. Mission complete. Alright guys, we are done with this mission. Let's head out. And let's talk to this guy. Nailer. Clue found. Now that was something to see. We was monitoring the whole thing from here. We got those natives squared away, so I guess I didn't have to rescue them. And Arachno's troops will be heading through. And let's see what the clue says. So using information we stole, we used Nailer's portal to cross over. We defeated the defenders and kidnapped some of the natives for information. Okay. I guess we're the Nemesis natives? I don't really know. We now have the ability to call this guy, and we can teleport to the mission entrance, so I'm going to head out. I want to sell some stuff, and I need to go to the base. Look at all these enhancements we got to get rid of, and we got to do something about the salvage. So I will do that off screen. When we come back, we will continue this story arc. And again, leave comments about what you think about soloing a pen and paper game. Do you really think it's all that different from soloing a game like this, as long as you have some sort of random number table that you can use to determine the reactions and the actions of all the NPCs that you're not playing? I mean, I think if you do that, and then you play the player characters as you want, not randomly, that's pretty darn close to what happens on a computer game. So let me know what you think, and let me know if you've tried any of these systems and whether you've had success or not, or whether you might want to try them. And let me know. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been City of Villains on the Rebirth server.